event. My name is Jabbar Rubaidi. I'm the director of Center for Middle East Studies. This center offers an interdisciplinary minor. As of today, we have 15 students, and I encourage you to visit the site and see for yourself what kind of courses the center offers. And I think it's great to have under your belt a minor which is really highly demanded in terms of the real world and the marketplace. So welcome to this event. I'm very honored to be part of this actually activity with my colleagues from the Department of Anthropology and of course the Center for Middle East Studies, and this is by all means it's really a collective act. But we have, like always, I have a good luck with the anthropology colleagues and my colleagues. The chair of the anthropology that's always open. Sandy, I will take a stand, please. And so Sandy is the chair of the anthropology department, and also I'm pleased to announce that we have two international scholars with us. One from Niger, please stand, Prof, and also one from Kurdistan, Iraq, please, Dr. Uthman. They and give them a hand. Well, welcome them. And so one guest comes through the Center for Dr. Edward Minix, Center for International Engagement. And then Dr. Dusky comes through the Center for Middle East, and of course our professor from Niger came actually through also the African Studies program. So you have this collection, and today's speech, and I know I have Professor Rozan will introduce our speech, so I'm going to reserve from introducing the speaker, but I will invite Sandy to the podium. But I would like to make two announcements quickly that please, we have a lot of activities and events because this is part of the educational Middle Eastern educational week for Middle Eastern studies. And next Thursday, actually, we have a very hot topic, which is education under fire, and it will take about issues in Iran. With your encouragement and your support, we can always offer and bring to the podium onto this campus more speakers and more international and global issues that engage our minds. The reason for that is really not to advance any agenda, except one thing that we need to educate ourselves, all of us, as people of letters and people of learning. We need to always do that, and really the real investment is our students. So and faculty, of course, always are looking for these opportunities to engage our their students with these activities. So again, thank you so much. Please contact me if you have any question about the minor in the Middle East. There are two opportunities. One is to go and study Arabic in Jordan. It's fully supported. And also I invite you, this is the first actually public announcement even before the internet, that we're going to send 2 to 3 interns to Jordan also is fully supported. So there are opportunities, and today's speakers, they're going to he's going to address something important to us because we are going to Turkey on March 9th. We will sign an agreement. This is the first time in this campus history with Marmara University, and of course we're going to take students and faculty and staff to Turkey. At this point, I would like to invite Sandy to the podium. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. We welcome you all to this event. The Bridgewater State University Anthropology Department hosts a distinguished lecture each year, and we are very pleased to have Henry Glassie to present our distinguished lecture. We are also happy to be co-hosting this event with the Middle East Studies program, as Jabbar mentioned. And I will be turning the podium over to one of our visiting assistant professors, Ozan Say, who will actually introduce our speaker, and I just wanted to extend my greetings. After the lecture, there are refreshments outside, so we hope that you will stay and share those with us. And now I will turn it over to Ozan to introduce Henry Glassie. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jabbar and Sandy, for those short introductions and leaving me the third and final one. We're not being bureaucratic here, but I think we're very excited to host such a distinguished scholar amongst us. So actually, let me begin by thanking Sandy and Jabbar as the chair of Department of Anthropology and Center for Middle East, and as well as Susan Williams and Patty Dyer for making this event possible. So let's give them an applause first and thank them for that. So I have the task of introducing our guest speaker, and I will do that gladly. Especially for me, there are many ways to describe Henry Glassie. He's a very distinguished folklorist and intellectual. He's a prolific and exquisite writer, I think. He's an inspiring teacher. He's a great mentor, and since he happens to be my dissertation advisor at the moment, he's still on active duty on that front. He's a remarkable public speaker and storyteller, as you will witness momentarily. And he is someone I have the privilege to call my friend, as he does to the people he works with on the field throughout his career. If we would list all of his works he has published, services he has done within and outside the academia, exhibits and panels he has put together, and awards he received, I think we could easily spend the whole hour doing just that. In that sense, I think it is impossible for me to do justice to his legacy, yet let me try to give you a brief sense of that history. Henry received his BA from Tulane University in English and Anthropology in 1964, and in his master's in folk culture from the Cooperstown Graduate Program in State University, New York in 1965, and his PhD in folklore from the University of Pennsylvania in 1969. And towards the end of his term as a graduate student at UPenn, he was actually serving as a state folklorist, so he started quite early. After teaching in IU's Folklore Institute, where I'm also a graduate student, from 1970 to 76, he went back to UPenn to be chair of the Department of Folklore and Folklife. In 1988, he went back to IU, and he was a college professor of folklore, where he also acted as the co-chair of Turkish studies throughout his term. He was as well chair of the Folklore Institute in 1989 and Near Eastern Languages and Cultures in 2000. At IU, in addition to his home base at the Department of Folklore and Ethnomusicology, he was also affiliated with Central Eurasian Studies, American Studies, Near Eastern Languages and Cultures, and India Studies. I think that shows you the depth and breadth of his affiliations. To my regret, but to his benefit and well-being, he retired in 2008. He's an expert on material culture, vernacular architecture, folk art, and folk life, but he has written almost on every aspect of human expression and creativity, covering different genres, performances, and theoretical and disciplinary issues. But he was never a scholar who was confined to the desktop. He was always out in the field, so he conducted and continues to conduct ethnographic fieldwork in very diverse parts of the world. As many folklorists do, he started at home in Virginia. His early research on the American cultural landscape resulted in 2 major books on vernacular architecture, and as many of his books, they're reprinted many times. With a Guggenheim Fellowship, then he headed to Ireland, where he produced numerous books, I think 5 of them, right, on Irish culture. One of them, Passing the Time in Ballymonone, won the Chicago Folklore Prize, which is a very prestigious prize, and the Haney Prize in the Social Sciences. Then he went to Turkey because he felt that he needed to work in a Muslim country, and maybe in the question and answer session you should ask him how he chooses these locations that he worked in. It's an interesting story. And the research he began in 1982, and it's continuing until today, on the living arts of modern Turkey, which he will be talking about today, has yielded a major exhibition and a book. Like two of his earlier books, Turkish Traditional Art Today was named among the notable books of the year by the New York Times. And for it, he was honored with the, let me get this correct, Award for Superior Service by the Turkish Ministry of Culture, and the Award for Outstanding Achievement in the Arts by the Assembly of Turkish Americans Association. And the reason I'm saying that is I think the fact that his work was praised and appreciated by the people in these countries and the government of these countries is a testament to not only the quality of his scholarship, but especially, I think, more importantly, his relationship to the people he worked with in these areas, which I think is quite important. For instance, an example of that is as a result of his continuous relationship with the people of Kütahya, he was declared an honorary citizen of that city. Similarly, in 1998, he received the State Certificate of Honor from the Ministry of Cultural Affairs of Bangladesh for his book, Art and Life in Bangladesh, based on his fieldwork in that country. He also conducted fieldwork in India, Japan, Brazil, and I'm probably forgetting some other places. And he continued to produce throughout his career. His latest book is on a Nigerian artist and Yoruba art called Prince 277. Henry has lectured widely, of course, in Europe, Asia, as well as North America, and he's been president of the Vernacular Architecture Forum and American Folklore Society, and also he's a folklore fellow of the Finnish Academy. And as a result of this career, of course, he received numerous awards and honors, which I don't have time to list. Let me mention just only two of them. He was nominated to the National Council on the Humanities by President Bill Clinton in 2000 and served on that committee in 2001. And most recently, in 2011, he was awarded the Charles Homer Haskins Prize by ACLS, which I think is the closest to a Nobel Prize in Social Sciences and Humanities in the US, which is a great honor. So that I think gives you a very brief sense of who Henry is, but I think you'll get a better sense when he goes. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Henry Glassie.
You're still here after all that. Get it started. Well, this is a stunning introduction, and I thank my dear friend Ozan, but you've also revealed that I have a certain kind of power over you, haven't you? So I have to, I'm going to be nice to you, however. You're very lucky to have Ozan among you. He's one of the very best people that's ever been through the Folklore Institute of Indiana University. We admire his work, and we love him as a person, and I'm envious of your time with him. My job to do today is to talk to you about Turkey. It could be a talk that I would give about any country in the world, but I love Turkey, and therefore I'm going to talk about Turkey. It also fits the idea of Middle East studies. But when I say, how can I talk about Turkey, I begin to answer very simply. I can't talk about Turkey. I can say to you that it's the middle place in the world. It's the bridge between East and West. I can say those things to you, but what I can really say is that I've approached Turkey in a very particular way, and that is through its working people, through Halit and Yakup, brothers, through Emine and Meryem, sisters. I've come to understand Turkey through its working people. First of all, I want to know about Turkey in the same way that you'd want to know about any country. The second thing is that I want to know about Turkey, but from a particular perspective, which is from the working people. And so I choose to understand the working people how? Courteously, by understanding them through the things that they make, through the things that they put in the world. In our shop, we call that material culture. Effectively, I want to use material culture as a way to get to know the people, and the people as a way to get to know the country. Instead of a series of abstractions, what I want to do is to be able to talk to you about what the Turkish people do and what they make, what they create. What they create as an emblem of who they are. It's a courteous way to come to people that you don't know yet. So if I want to know Safet Sirler, I begin to know Safet through the alem that he creates that tips the dome of the mosque and grips the sky. I don't just know him as a person. I know him as a person who can offer to me a beautiful thing that causes me to think and causes me to get to know him. If I want to know Aisha Kahraman, I know Aisha initially through the bocha that she made for her dowry. The very careful and beautiful embroidery that she was able to create exactly in the tradition of her city, Kütahya, that she will take into her dowry when she leaves her parents' home, finds a new home with a man, and in that home with that man will have a symbol of herself and her tradition that she can carry as an emblem in her new world of her excellence. This is the prelude. This is what I did. I began to understand Turkey through, in my opinion, the greatest city in the world. It's a city that Napoleon called the natural capital of the world. That is the city of Istanbul. For 1,000 years, it was the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire. For nearly 500 more, it was capital of the Ottoman Empire. It's the city that sits at the middle, between north and south, between east and west. And I decided to move into the city initially in order to begin to understand the people of Turkey through their creations. I began in the covered bazaar. It was founded right after the conqueror Mehmet came and took the city of Istanbul in 1453. Among the very first things that he had established in the city was one node in the Silk Road, a particular place where beautiful things could be brought from all over Asia and transshipped to Europe. That is, from far China through Istanbul, things would go to Venice and then ultimately through Europe. He wanted to control that trade route, but also to make it possible that the beautiful things of Asia and Europe could transform back and forth across that particular bridge that Istanbul rested on. That is to say, we think of globalization as something new. Globalization has always been here. It's always been a part of commerce. And at the very beginning of the Ottoman Empire, as it has reestablished itself in the city of Istanbul, it was tremendously important to put there a commercial center that would allow for the distribution of beautiful objects. Established in the 15th century, the covered bazaar has today 4,500 shops. In Turkey, people say, as a kind of blessing, you should be seen shopping. What could be more wonderful than to be among 4,500 shops that convey to you all the goods of Europe and Asia? That covered bazaar makes one point in the place where I began to do the field work in Turkey that would allow me to know something about the Turkish people through their objects. Right out of the back of the covered bazaar, a road tips over the hill heading down for the Golden Horn. This is called Uzun Çarşı, the street of the Long Market. This was the backbone of commercial production in the days of the Byzantine Empire. It continues to be, to this day, a place where things are made and sold. It ends at a point called Küçük Pazar. But what I'm doing here is simply suggesting geographically a very small area on the side of the mountain in a massive city, Istanbul, and here's the place that I decided to nestle down and settle in and really get to know what was happening. It's a place where handmade things are made and handmade things are sold. Baskets, barrels. It's a place of production as well as commerce. So here is my friend Mustafa Sargin working at the top of a 16th century Han and making beautiful chests that women will fill with the objects that they've made in their girlhood, that they would carry into the homes of their husbands in order to transport the objects that are theirs alone, theirs to possess, theirs to sell. I not only saw what was made and what was sold. Having Turkish, I got to know the people. Mustafa Keseci, a wood turner, was one of the people who began to tell me how to think about Istanbul. I didn't want to just look. I'm not a tourist. I didn't want to just look. I'm not even a historian. What I wanted to do was to begin to understand the city of Istanbul and its commerce from the standpoint of the people who actually conduct it. So Mustafa Keseci was among the first who began to explain to me a Turkish vision of what art is. The things that are made here, baskets, barrels, little boxes, may be thought of as art. Why not? And I asked him to tell me what art was, and he said, art is whatever you do if you do it with complete devotion. But he wasn't interested in deciding that art was only painting or art was only sculpture. It was whatever you do that you really believe in, that you dedicate your life to. Playing basketball, as well as making a painting. Anything that you do beautifully, getting dressed, making dinner. He said that anything that anybody does was complete devotion. And he called that devotion ashk. It means passion. It's the passion of lovers separated and pining for each other. It's a passion of the Sufi on earth pining for reunion with God. That kind of passion, the passion of perfection, is what drives the artist. He said it doesn't matter what medium you work in. He's a wood turner. He works with wood. But that's the way that he finds his passion. It doesn't mean, as I begin to understand the world that Mustafa Keseci operates in and manages, it doesn't matter what the medium is, but that doesn't mean that there's not a hierarchy of media. He believed that at the very bottom was the making of baskets. This is his friend Bilal Gurchai, on the side of the mountain in Istanbul making baskets. At the very top of his hierarchy was calligraphy, the writing of the name of God, the Word of God. So that people come into the earth with very different opportunities. But these differences of opportunity are only a matter of chance. It's only an accident. Some people are born to be basket makers, others are born to be calligraphers. But what matters is the dedication that you have to your work. The work's got to be done. People need things. But if that work is done with devotion and care, if it's done with passion, if it's done with ashk, then it's art. It's art if it's a piece of calligraphy, like this made by my friend Muhittin Serin. It can be art if it's a basket, like this made by Mustafa Burç. What matters is not the medium. We casually identify art with certain media. Painting is art. Sculpture is art. Baskets are not art. That's not the way the Turkish artisan looks at the world. The Turkish artisan, what matters is not your opinion. It doesn't matter what the beholder thinks. What matters is what's in the heart of the creator. And if that creator is sincere, if that creator is full of love, if that creator has an ashk for making things, then the result of that work is what they would call sanat, or art. I began in the great city of Istanbul, and I tracked trails of trade all over the interior of Turkey. My desire was to meet people of different kinds, to stay with them, to live with them, to stay with them a long time, to get to know the way that they represented themselves, not the way that I represent them, but the way that they represented themselves through the things that they created. The longest trips that I took me to the high mountain villages where carpets are woven. Here's the village of Nebiler. It's on the screen. At the very center of Nebiler, you can see the finger pointing to God. That is to say, the minaret, the white stripe that leads you upward. If you were to dash from this point right into the middle of that village, you would find yourself in the village mosque. The mosque would be very clear in its construction. In the front, there's a wall, and that wall is oriented towards Mecca. But what's most important about that wall are two signs of light. One of them is that there are windows. Windows let the light directly in, the light that comes from God. There's no inner sanctum. There's no holy of holies. There's nothing obscured to vision. That is to say, when you are at prayer, you see everything there is to be able to see. You see the light that pours in through the windows, and in the middle you see a niche, and the niche is actually a construction that represents a particular surah from the Holy Quran that says God's light is like the light that appears in a niche. So the mihrab, the niche in the Qibla wall that's oriented to Mecca, is a metaphoric representation, a work of art that refers to a particular great sacred text, and that orients all the people of the village, all the men and women. When they come into this mosque to pray, they will all be oriented as one with all of the other Muslims in the world. Just outside the walls of the mosque, there are the houses of the village people. And beyond those houses, there are a few fields where they can work collectively. These are fields where grain is raised. It's a kind of agricultural image that you might imagine. But all of these mountain villages where the beautiful carpets, in my opinion, perhaps the greatest work of art that human beings have ever created, where the beautiful carpets are created by women, beyond the land, are the mountains. And the mountains are places where sheep can be raised and where they can graze. These villages are all, the same thing is said to me. How does the village operate? Hayvancılık and halıcılık. It operates by taking care of animals and making carpets. Basically what you have is sheep. The sheep give wool. The wool is sheared. The sheared wool is spun. The spun wool is dyed. And you've created right out of the ground, out of the stingy, thin soils of the upland, among the rocks where you really can't do farming, but where you can watch the cattle, the sheep, and the goats graze, where the animals can find food, where the animals can produce hair, the hair can be turned into yarn, the yarn can be colored, and then it's possible for the artists to sit down and create. Because they don't go to the store and buy paint. They don't go to the store and buy brushes. Instead, they use the very materials that grow out of the, as I say, stingy landscape that they have been given. They use those materials to weave carpets. Always two people together. This is Aysel and Ayfer, Kaya, in the village of Karagürmlek. And when they are weaving together, they're not only weaving together, there's an active education that's occurring. The older sister sits at the right. She teaches her younger sister the craft. She gets to own the carpet that's the product of their labor, but her younger sister gets education. So the first thing that happens when two women, young women generally, sit down to weave carpets together is that the older one generously teaches the younger one. She'll then move on, the younger one will shift to the right, and she'll teach someone younger. It's not really the kind of art that you always hear about that's passed down from mother to daughter. It's normally passed down from older sister to younger sister, or older sister to younger cousin, or younger cousin to close friend. There comes as a result of this work a circle, a sisterhood of women who are in the business of producing great art. They don't call what they make a craft. They call it art. They don't call what they do a job. They call it a meslek. It's a profession. They use the same word for their art that a doctor would use for medicine, a lawyer would use for the law. They're artists. They make important art, and that important art is a yield of, first of all, their land, rocky mountains that provide places for sheep to eat, sheep that provide hair, that provides yarn that can be dyed, and then they've got a product at the end of this. The Cherokee Khan, she's standing proudly. She's just, they use the word slaughtered. She's just slaughtered this rug. She wove it, created it, but now she's cut it from the loom. And in cutting it from the loom, it's no longer a live object in her hands. It's no longer a thing that's delighting her in the process of production. It is now a thing designed to be sold. And so it goes to market. And here it is. The first thing to be said about this rug is my friend Mehmet Öztürk. He's selling that rug for Sherike. Sherike is at home working on another rug. She's sent him to the market with a particular price to get, a particular price to ask. She's completely framed him in with her own desires. And what she wants, it's not really money. She wants gold. When Mehmet sells this rug, he will take all the money that he makes and give it to Sherike. She will join with the other women in her community. They'll give all that money and they'll buy a man a ticket on the bus to Istanbul, and they'll send him off to Istanbul, and he will come back having bought for them gold bracelets. They say, proverbially, art is a golden bracelet. But it's not only that. How do you set the price? These country women from the back of beyond check the international price of gold in the newspaper, and they set the price of their rugs based on that. That's smart economy. They're not just thinking about the mere economy of the United States. They're thinking about a global economy, and they're operating in it. The last thing they want, money, they call it it's just paper. No paper. Altın istiyoruz. We want gold. And they get gold, and as a result, the most alluring and flirtatious thing that a young woman can do is lift her sleeve and allow maybe 18 perfectly pure gold bracelets to jangle on her wrist. That's money that she's going to take into marriage. That's money that's going to protect her commercially, financially, for the rest of her life. That's her money, and she can do with it what she wants to. She'll send that gold out into the world to do good for herself. So here what we've got in this carpet is an agricultural product. It's an agricultural product that has been refined as extremely as it possibly can be. My own ancestors, for example, in the mountains of Virginia, used to take corn and turn it into whiskey because that was the most compressed and extreme version, technologically, that you could manage of corn. To send a wagon to town with bushels and bushels of corn, but to send a wagon to town that's been made into white lightning, a whole lot more profit is involved, because what you've done is you've used your knowledge to convert natural materials, corn, into something that's highly unnatural, whiskey. It's exactly what they've done. They've taken the natural floor of a mosque. It's exactly like walking through a little New England cemetery, because every single rug was woven by one woman or two or three together, and what they did was to weave that to commemorate a recently deceased person. A son who was killed in a motorcycle accident. A man who fell off the mountain while tending the sheep and died in a defile in the snow. Those people who die, a beloved uncle who's just passed, are commemorated in a rug that's on the floor. And so every one of those rugs, of course, means someone who has passed. That means that all the people who are dead are symbolized in the place where people gather for prayer. And in prayer, what are they imagining? Rejoining with all of those people, that community will be brought together ultimately once again in heaven, where the streams flow by and the flowers bloom. All these rugs are also a museum to the art of the local women. That is, they get a central place in the mosque by virtue of the rugs that they make. Their rugs are the art in the mosque. Almost nothing on the walls. It's the floors that matter. The floors are the intimate environment in which you actually pray. So the rugs are a part of your prayer activity. They're a part of commemoration. They're a part of your acknowledging of the wonder of the art of women. And this Museum of Women's Art provides to women materials for future creation. So in the mihrab of the mosque in the village of Ahmet Ler, there is a particular rug. You can see it there. It's perhaps about 110 years old. My friend Saniye Balji saw that rug, and she made one. That is, she used a design that was on the floor of her mosque, the mosque becomes a force in the process of tradition, a way that you can utilize the designs that are around you in order to connect properly to the community that you live in, that you can honor the tradition of your mothers and your grandmothers and your great-grandmothers and great-great-grandmothers, a line of women going back as far as you can imagine. You become part of that sequence by making for yourself a beautiful carpet, using the carpets on the floor of the mosque as your design. This carpet, said Saniye, was her self-portrait. That's the very word she used for it. Now, how could this be a self-portrait? Obviously, she's not thinking in terms of representational art. She's talking in terms of a symbolic possibility. And this is the way that she read that very carpet for me. First, it says who I am, not Saniye. It says that I'm Yorik. That is, I'm a person of nomadic inheritance. I belong in a sequence of nomadic people. I am Yorik. This carpet is Yorik. This tells you who I am in the world. The second thing it does is tell you who I am precisely through my ishchilik, through the workmanship, the way that I've created this rug. This rug shows you that I'm really good at what I do. The knots are all the same size. The dyes are diverse. The design is symmetrically drawn. It's an elegant and excellent and perfectly confected piece of work that tells you, I'm really good at this. But this is really what she meant. What the rug shows is a picture of a mihrab. It shows the niche that's in the qibla wall at the front of the mosque. She's represented an architectural feature, and that architectural feature in turn represents a holy text. She's represented light. That's what the picture is of. There's an image of light, a kind of blazing halo, and inside that grows the Hayat al-Jid, grows the tree of life. And this is what she said. If you look, there are two vertical lines that are going up inside that mihrab. Inside the frame of orthodoxy, inside the promise of my religion, there are two sequences of steps. And what are those steps? It's me, Saniye. I grow up. I have a baby. I make dinner. My husband does not respect me. My husband does respect me. Things happen. Life goes on. And then finally, mashallah, life, this veil of tears is over, and I get to bloom eternally in paradise. The tree of life, the image inside the mihrab, is an image that says that life is nothing but a sequence of hardships, but wonder of wonders. It ends at some point, and we get to spend all of time in paradise. The Saniye Balji makes for you an image of herself. Not a picture of her face, but a picture of her soul lifting an ascent within the frame of orthodoxy that promises that paradise will be what it is. Her work situates herself in her village that's centered by a mihrab. I take you to a second place, a city. And in the city, what is remarkable is there is the same basic pattern of the organization of space. That is to say, in every city in Turkey, once you've found out which is the great mosque, we're in the city of Kütahya. This is the great mosque. They call it Ulu Jami, which means great mosque. As soon as you find out which is the great mosque, you've centered yourself in the city. There's a gridiron, like in any city, but the gridiron really doesn't matter. What matters is that there's a mosque, and that mosque provides internally a wonderful place of calm and of rest, a place where you can pray, but you can just rock back on your heels, a place where you can visit, a place where you can see other people. It provides the center of the city in exactly the same way that the mosque provides the center of the rural village. Then around that mosque, there's a market. The market is made up of small shops that sell things that are made in that market. And then out beyond the market, there's a ring of old houses, and beyond it, a ring of new houses. That's the way that the city is organized, not from the standpoint of its plot or its plan, but from the standpoint of the way that people live in it. There's a central mosque. The mosque centers the market centers the old neighborhood. The old neighborhood is surrounded by the new neighborhood. The city of Kütahya is where I'm taking you, exactly for the same reason that I took you to the particular villages that I did, because there, the woman's art of carpets was the great thing. In Kütahya, the great art is a ceramic art. It's created in this place because you can see that the city is actually surrounded by white mountains that are entirely made up of a white clay called dumbledek. Dumbledek is a basic material that people use to make their pottery. You'll understand the exact parallels. Outside the rural village, there are mountains. On those mountains, there are sheep. The sheep provide the basic materials that are ultimately transformed into carpets that provide the living for the people. In the same way, in the city of Kütahya, outside the city, there is clay, and that clay is processed in certain workshops. I've been going to Kütahya for over 30 years. When I first was there were 23 big workshops and about 60 small workshops. Today, there are about 25 big workshops and about 200 small workshops. That is, think of 10,000 potters in one city. There are 10,000 people who make the ceramics that are not only used in Kütahya, but in fact throughout the Middle East, or not only the Middle East. In Washington, D.C., the Great Mosque is entirely sheathed with tiles made in the city of Kütahya. In a workshop like this, Suslercini, there's a team. The team is run by a master. This is Ihsan Erdayer. He manages the team. His team is made up of young men who shape and fire the clay, and women who then decorate the clay. Once the clay has been shaped, fired once, decorated, it comes back into the hands of the master who glazes it. A wonderful trick within the Turkish language is lots of things need to be secret in the kinds of mysteries that are used to make beautiful things like the pottery of Kütahya. And so the word in Turkish for glaze is secret. If you ask a master what is the composition of your glaze, he says it's secret. He applies the glaze, the pot is fired in a well, and the result of this is the normal everyday wear. About 5 million pieces made a year that are sent out all over Turkey and the Middle East. The question is, in line with the things I've been saying, is all of this art? All 5 million pieces? The answer is no. You need to make things just to make a living. They're called emek. They're good enough. People like it. But within these workshops, within these hundreds of workshops, among those 10,000 potters, there are some great masters who make what is unequivocally hakiki sanat, genuine art. This piece by my friend Mehmet Gürsoy is an example. There's in the workshop, there's a master, there are young men, there are women, but they all depend upon a great designer. This is a man called Ahmet Şahin, who is the greatest designer of Turkish ceramics. You should already know who Ahmet Şahin is. It's not my fault that you don't. It's the world's fault that you don't. In the 20th century, there were probably, in the entire world, 3 most important potters. One was a Japanese man named Shoji Hamada. Another was an Englishman named Bernard Leach. The third was a Turkish man called Ahmet Şahin. Ahmet Şahin designed 60% of the pottery that was made in Kütahya. Imagine 5 million pieces. He started when he was 12 years old, worked until he was 90. That's millions upon millions upon millions of ceramic works that he designed. But he not only designed, making the designs that were used by everybody in the workshops, he also painted. He painted beautiful ceramic works in order to be able to inspire his community. In the city, there are many masters. They are called usta. But there's only one man, Ahmet Shaheen, in the city of Kütahya, who is called Son Usta. I was once walking along the street with Ahmet Bey, and he stopped and said to me, "You know what you ought to do? You ought to write a book about Turkish art." I said, "Yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm planning to do." And he said, "And I should be its kahraman, and I should be the hero of your book." Well, the fact is, I did do that. I did write that book. He is the hero of my book. He's a hero of my book because he was a great artist, as full an artist as anyone would need to ever know. He's a man who worked constantly in terms of ash. He painted beautiful things. He made great designs. But he also, in his vision, had to teach. I find it ironic that frequently American artists think it's almost degrading to teach. That really what you want to do is to just be an artist. But in the Turkish workshop, to be an artist is not the highest thing at all. That's a sanatkar. It's good to be an artist, but it's really important to be an usta, to be a master. Because a master not only makes and makes beautifully, a master also teaches the next generation. Ahmet Shaheen told me that he would teach anybody who wanted to learn. Anybody who came to him, Hassan, Hussein, it didn't matter. Whoever came to him, he would teach that person. Here he's sitting with Ibrahim Erdair and Mehmet Gürsoy. The time that this picture was taken, Ahmet Shaheen was the Son Usta, the ultimate master of Kütahya. Ibrahim and Mehmet were just getting going on their careers as independent masters. Well, Ahmet Shaheen died in 1996. But he's left behind him a great group of people who were trained at his side. People to whom he transferred everything that he'd learned in a long, long life of excellent production. So Mehmet and Ibrahim are now the young masters of Kütahya. What's important in their work is, first of all, just as Mustafa Keseci told me a long time ago, what's important, first of all, is ash. It's passion. Here's Kadriye Tosun, one of the great young masters of the city of Kütahya. When she starts to work on her art, she goes into a very special place, a place that's absolutely removed from the quotidian, a place where she can only think about what her passion is. And her passion is to make things beautiful. It's in this situation that her master, Ibrahim, said to me one time, when I'm really working and the work is perfect, I can feel the hand of God on the back of my own hand. I can feel the supernatural assistance when I'm in this very special place where I'm capable of creation. So what the artist, to be an artist, first of all has to do is to leave. This is Abdul Kadir Ucarolu. He's painting a brand new plate. First of all, he has to leave this simple world and get into a world where his passion can take over. Just like an athlete will talk about getting in the groove, or a musician will talk about getting in the groove. Anybody that's played in a band knows that there's a great moment when you feel like you're not playing the music, but the music is playing you. That somehow there's something bigger that's happening. It's exactly the way that these people think. They get into the flow. And in that flow, they remove from all the kinds of pains around them. I one time asked a group of weavers in a village, I said, is this work that you do when you weave, is it good work? Do you enjoy it? They said, oh yes. I said, why? They said, first of all, you get to sit down. That's a good thing. Second of all, you get to stay inside. That's a good thing. Third of all, you never waste a minute, but time becomes forgotten. And the woman said, this is exactly the way the country woman would say, I get so involved in my work and I stand up and I say, oh my God, I've got to piss. just simply have forgotten everything about the world because I was so lost in the state. That's exactly what happens. It happens to the weavers, it happens to the potters, it happens to the carpenters, it happens to the basketball players, it happens to anybody who becomes completely involved in what they're doing. When passion takes over, time evaporates. And when time evaporates, you become possible. It becomes possible for you to create something that's almost supernaturally exact. We a lot of times think that when artists are free, they create something wild. It's not the way that the Turkish artist takes of it. He or she feels that when they're absolutely, completely free and completely capable, they can make something so exact that it feels supernatural, that it feels impossible. I remember once when I was in Dublin, in Ireland, I would come every day to the university to see the Book of Kells. And I found that almost every time I showed up, there was a young priest who was there. And we would look at the Book of Kells together, this great Irish production from 1500 years ago, and he would say, how in the world did they make that? It's not possible to imagine how they made it. And he said, take a look at that dot. And there's a tiny dot on the page, no bigger than the dot that you see on the top of the letter I. And he picked up a magnifying glass and he showed me that inside that dot there was a little face. They didn't have magnifying glasses. How did they do it? The young priest said to me, the only way they could possibly have done it is that they would receive the assistance of God. That's exactly the way these Turkish artisans feel. If they go into this place that removes them, they're able to create supernatural exactitude. If you look at this plate's really about 1.5 feet across. But no matter how big that slide gets, it's still going to look absolutely exact. You can imagine that plate being made as big as the sky, and it would still be exact. Karim Keshijigil, who painted that, went into a war, went into a place away, went into a totally private experience where his pure passion took over, and that's what he created. This creation is multiple in its impact. The first thing that you do is you work very carefully in drawing, and then you work very carefully in painting, and then you've created something. It's in your hands that anybody can look at and appreciate. You don't have to be knowledgeable at all. The Turkish artists say that every work of art is the result of their passion, of their aşk, but every work of art lifts the viewer on a stairway. The first step of that stairway is the art makes an appeal to the eye. You look at it and say, it's pretty. That's the most trivial dimension. Very often in the West, it's the most important dimension. We talk about aesthetics. But they consider this the most trivial dimension. The first thing that the object does is it appeals to the eye. Or if it's music, it appeals to the ear. Got a good beat, I like it. It's a good movie, I like it. That's a low-level response to something. So you make a beautiful object and someone recognizes it to be beautiful. That begins an act of communication between you and the artist. The second thing that this work does, this is in the hands of Mehmet Gürsoy, and Mehmet Gürsoy was one of the people who talked in these terms. The second thing it does is it makes a gift to the eye, then it makes a gift to the mind. And that gift to the mind is a historical reference. The plate that you just saw was made about 5 years ago. This tile was made in 1550. When this plate is made, it intends a reference to tiles that were made all the way back in the middle of the 16th century. This is a tile on the front of the tomb of Suleiman the Magnificent, the greatest of all Ottoman emperors. And he gathered to him the greatest architect, Sinan, and the greatest craftsman from the city of Iznik and Kütahya to make the tiles. He was the most powerful, maybe in his moment, the most powerful man in the world. And he could have anything that he wanted. And he had tiles that were made in a style that the modern artists called hatai. And what hatai means is that these are not realistic looking flowers. They're highly ornamented and decorative flowers that don't really connect representationally to the flowers in the fields. Instead, they represent a kind of floralness itself. So the first thing that happens is the thing is pretty. The second thing is that it makes a historical reference, and in this case it's a reference to the city of Istanbul. This is the Mosque of Suleiman the Magnificent, where those tiles are to be found. This image of Istanbul represents the middle of the 16th century, the most powerful moment in Turkish history. And so the modern artist doesn't refer back to any time. He refers back to a time in which Turkey was powerful and in which the government was directed by religious rule. Those are the things that the modern artist is interested in evoking in his brand new work of art. He wants to make a new work of art, and through historical reference, he wants to bring history into the thing that he's created, to make the thing not only moving to your eye, but also to your mind. That's not the top. Where the top is when the work of art makes an appeal not merely to the eye, not merely to the mind, but directly and electrically to the soul. The kinds of designs that are made on the ceramics, and remember what I'm talking to you about is what is Turkish culture. This is Turkish culture as represented to you by Turkish people, not by me. They make 3 different somatic varieties of ceramics. Here's Karim Keçicigil. He's holding up a plate with a prayer written on it. This represents one of the kinds of ornament that's possible on these plates. They call it yazılı. It is calligraphic. This is a perfect instance, it's the picture that began this whole show, perfect instance of a yazılı, of a calligraphic plate. It was made by Nurten Şahin. She is the wife of the grandson of the great Ahmet Şahin. And when she set about making this design, she first of all drew the calligraphy from the works of her husband's grandfather. She's making a direct reference to the great Ahmet Şahin. The second thing, of course, is she's making a picture, an image of a holy text. This is the opening formula of the Holy Quran, in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. This is what you say when you go out the door. This is what you say when you start the car. This is what you say at the apogee of love. This is what you say when you're organizing the world. This is what you say. In the name, I go out of the door. In the name, I go out of the door. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. That is a God that's going to forgive me for all the asinine things that I'm going to do for the rest of the day. Not a God that's terrifying and fearsome, but a God who is full of love and will forgive me for my idiocy, for my mere humanity. I go out into the world, and this is what I go out into the world. I go out into the world under this direction. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, the Besmellah. Well, Nurten took that work of calligraphy. She put it on a plate, partially because when the artist draws the Besmellah, it is said the artist becomes blessed. But it's also because the artist wishes to make a gift to the person who would buy this beautiful work of art. It's not only a beautiful work of art, it's a beautiful work of art that carries a piece of calligraphy, and the calligraphy is the repetition of a holy text, and the holy text, in fact, is protective of you. It asks the assistance of a loving God. This is Nurten, who designed that plate. She's holding up the second somatic variety of plate, that is to say, geometric. The geometric plate, this is made by Ibrahim Erdair, the geometric plate can be taken as just pretty. Remember, that's the first step. On the first step, it's pretty. It's pretty. Second step is historical. Yes, indeed, it's historical. This is the design. It's called the interlock star. This is the design that's seen on the doors of every historical Ottoman mosque. Not on the inside necessarily, but always on the door. This is the entry point. But what is it? Is it a pretty design? This is an image of the will of God at work in the world. So the outsider, the European, frequently finds it very strange that Islamic art would be so filled with mere decorative motifs. It's not. It's not at all filled with mere decorative motifs. It's filled with images of a deity who doesn't have a face and doesn't have a form and doesn't have a body. You can't make a picture of God, but you can make a picture of the consequences of the existence of God. You can make a sign to the troubled soul of the existence of God by showing that everything in God's world is so completely orderly. And what the geometric design, painted by an artist on a plate made of mud in the city of Kentucky, what the geometric design does is say, this is the world ruled by the will of the one God. Isn't it wonderful that we have darkness so we can sleep and light so we can work? All the miracles of Islam are the common miracles of daily life. Isn't it wonderful that there are flowers? Isn't it wonderful that there's grain? Isn't it wonderful that cows give milk? Isn't it wonderful that the wind drives ships? All these fantastic wonders, if you just stop and think of them, think about Walt Whitman saying that there's miracle enough in a mouse to stagger sextillion of infidels. This is the miracle of life, is that it's orderly. It makes sense. The third variety of art made as a gift to the soul is floral, chichekli, they say. This is Mehmet Gürsoy. He's holding a particular plate, his plate. Now, clearly, we're in the realm of something pretty. Flowers are pretty. Why have flowers around except for the fact that they're pretty? That's what they're about. They don't work, they don't do, you don't normally eat them. They're just around to be pretty. God clearly ornamented the world with flowers and ornamented the air with birds, and so flowers and birds are constantly used as images of beauty itself. We talk about flowery speech when people are beautiful. We talk about flowers as being the very emblems. You give flowers to people at crucial moments of life because they're beautiful and they beautify. So one thing about the thing, it's pretty. The second thing about it is it's historical. It's a direct reference to a particular plate made at the Ottoman High Point in the middle of the 16th century. But it's also a piece of poetry. Here's what Mehmet would say to you about this plate. These are not real flowers. Clearly, we're not trying to make realistic flowers, like Dutch painters of the 17th century. They really, really worked in making flowers look like flowers. What are these flowers? Even what are they called? These are not flowers at all. They're abstract images of flowers. And as abstract images of flowers, they stand for the abstract image of human beings, which is to say, these are not pictures of people, they're pictures of souls. What the flowers are is they represent the soul. So what you're seeing is a whole floral garden filled with representations of people as souls. If you look at the bottom, all these flowers, although they're different, grow out of a little red dot at the bottom that's called the root. That's the emblem of the will of God. And what these flowers are, look, some are red, some are blue, some are green, some are big, some are little, is they represent diversity. Nobody is complete. This is axiomatic. Nobody is complete. Nobody is unified. Everybody is partial. You're only a man or only a woman. You may be tall or you might be short, but you can't be both. You might be rich, you might be poor. The world is broken into all kinds of dichotomies, all kinds of differences, all kinds of oppositions. But the thing that the plate is saying is all those differences are the result of God's will. Some people are black, some people are white, some people are male, some people are female. Don't fight it. That's the way it is. Respect it. Love it. Fall in love with the diversity of humankind because that's God's work that you're looking at. God wants us to be tall and short, male and female, black and white, even rich and poor. And then all of that diversity, all of those different flowers of different colors and different forms, All of them are flowering within the perfect circle, this is what Mehmet Gürsoy would tell you, of God's love. So what you think is a pretty plate is full of flowers. What you think is a historical reference to the 16th century, it is. But what it really is it's an argument for peace. It's an argument for love. It's an argument for all of us joining together, joining our diversity into a unity of perfect harmony. So here is the summary of my wish to talk to you about Turkey through its working people, and to talk about its working people through their art. Here's Kerim Keçicigil, an electrician by day, an artist by night. When he begins to create, he goes into a special place of dense concentration, of devotion, where his ashk, his passion, flows through his fingers onto a piece of mud. At the end of his work, he stands up. He's proud. He's an individual. I can do this. This is tough, hard. I'm proud I can do this. So he releases his soul into the work in order to stand into the world as a proud individual, and then he leaves this plate in the world as a message to you. And you can think it's pretty. You can think it makes a historical reference to past Turkish design, that it's a part of an on-flow of tradition. Or you can understand it the way that Kerim Keçicigil understands it. That it's almost unbelievable, supernatural complexity of geometry is a representation, as close as you can get in Islam, is a representation of God. Not of God's body, but of the consequence of the existence of God, which is orderliness. It gets messed up, but essentially what we have is an orderly universe. And it's our goal, our obligation, as much as we possibly can, to contribute to the orderliness of that universe. And what's the orderly, how is orderliness produced? It's through passion. It's through ashk. It's through love. If I love my neighbor as myself, then clearly what I'm doing is contributing to the orderliness of the world. I'm aligning my energies with God's. If I'm a potter and I make a beautiful pot, and I give that beautiful pot to somebody else, I'm creating a communication that says, through that pot, as I can do it, as well as I can do it, this is love. I love you. You love me. And if we all love each other, what happens? The world is full of order. Why? Because we put ourselves, it's not my point, I'm not preaching at you, I'm telling you what they think. Because I put myself in harmonic relationship with the will of God. God's will is to love. And then all around the outside, on the edge, the border of this plate, if it were mysterious to you up to this point, Kerim has written Allah, 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 Allah. The plate, you buy it, put it on your wall. It's pretty, it's historical, traditional. But what it really is an argument from the potter to you to join together with him in a universe constructed in light of its diversity with a proposition of love. And that's, in Kerim's mind, to be constantly remembering the prayer. Culture, I'm at an end of Turkey is the Turkish land itself. And the Turkish land itself, whether you're talking about remote villages like Paşakuri or big cities, those remote villages are all, those big cities are all constructed around the proposition of a dominant mosque. That is, a building in which prayer is conducted and things are centered. And the greatest of all Turkish works is not the one that I've talked about at all. It's the amazing architecture of the sacred building. But in this time granted to me, thank you so much for your patience. In this time granted for me, what I wanted to do is to introduce you to the people that I know in Turkey who have constructed my opinion of who they are, and that's a fair representation from an ethnographer of what I've learned. Thanks a lot, folks.